You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it's time once again for a little show we like to call around these parts the Option Block, your bi-weekly source for all things options related. You can call it your bi-weekly options extravaganza, if you will. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-compelling, at least we think so, Options Insider Radio Network. A tip of the cap to all of you out there in the Secret Handshake Club. Glad to see you out there having fun, enjoying, engaging with the content. Got another great Q&A coming up for you this week. The director of risk himself back on the network. Haven't talked to him in a while. Obviously, we did advisors optionally, but outside of that, it's been pretty much the better part of this year. So should be fun one to really bounce your questions off about portfolio management, risk management, trade construction, all that good stuff, and a whole bunch more that'll be live tomorrow. And of course, Friday, back at you with the oddities, all the fun live stuff in between, and a whole bunch more. You know where to go. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to join, to get the keys. You'll get a video explaining to you what the Secret Handshake is. And then you, too, can be part of the Secret Handshake Club. And, of course, however you listen, even if you're after the fact, on demand, we know a lot of you like to engage that way, too. We love you all. Keep those questions and comments coming, too. We do love to hear from all of you out there. And before we hear from our cohorts today, we have to kick off our broadcast week the way we usually do. We have to guess that 80s wrestlers' entrance music. Going to mix it up a little bit this week. Going to go a little bit outside of the 80s. I've said before, I'm not really a big kind of attitude era, Monday Night Wars era wrestling kind of guy. I never really watched it in that era. However, there is one seminal figure from that era who is back these days and is doing kind of a rotation in the mainstream WWE. And the reason I know that is because, against my better judgment, I had my arm twisted into going and seeing this individual recently in Chicago. And so it was fun. Everyone was screaming their name, as that's what you do. Of course, 16,000 crazy people screaming the name. So I, of course, was masked to the hilt and vaccinated. So that made it good. I probably won't be doing that again. But my son really wanted to go see this person. So I had my arm twisted and we went. And I will say his music is pretty cool. And it has been in my head for pretty much the better part of the last week. So let's see if you folks can guess it as well. Here we go. Can you guess that wrestler's entrance music? All right. It keeps going on for a bit. It's a good one. I like it. I will say his entrance is pretty memorable. There's a lot of fire. There's a lot of sparks. There's pretty much the whole place chanting in unison. So to see it in person is pretty cool. So I will go around the horn now. He was fashionably late as always, but he is our reigning and defending champ. So I will give him first crack at this pitch here. Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. A, welcome back to Ye Old Program. And B, can you name this not really an 80s wrestler, more of a 2000s into modern era wrestler, because he's still doing it right now?
Let's see. At first I was going to go with Mick Foley, but I know he's not doing it anymore. I was thinking possibly The Undertaker, but I'm going to go with, I'm going to say Christian Cage.
Wow. Deep cut. He's actually wrestling right now as well, as you might imagine. And he actually went to the competitors group, the AEW, so he defected from WWE, and he is actually wrestling again, which is weird. I don't really know him either. I just know of him. But no, that's not the answer. I will now go out to the greasiest of meatballs. Mr. Meatball, sir, I knew this would be a little bit of a harder one. First off, welcome, A, from the land of the pit, of course. And then B, how is our friend the Rock Lobster doing? And C, do you have a guess on this music, sir?
Well, I'm going to try, but I have no idea. I'll get to that in a second. Rock Lobster is still feeling a little under the weather, so I think you're going to be hearing a lot of me this week. Things are great in Texas. And, all right, I got to think about who that could be that would be kind of Attitude Era and have kind of marching music.
I will say this guy was kind of the standard bearer for the competition to WWE. He was like the WCW main guy.
Oh, interesting. It's not Sting.
That's a good guess. He would have been one of them. He would have been, wait, hold on. Before you guess, Uncle Mike, I will give you both this extra little boost. See if you can't guess it now after this. Hold on. All right, there you go. If that doesn't tell you the answer, I don't know what will. He was kind of WCW's answer to Stone Cold at the time. Mr. Uncle Mike, sounds like you had it before. Can you possibly guess it now, sir?
I can, yeah. It was definitely Goldberg. Goldberg was quite the phenomenon back in the late 90s. And if you ever want a couple of cool YouTube things to watch, you just watch when Goldberg got the title from Hollywood Hogan. They did it in the Georgia Dome because he was a former Atlanta Falcon guy. And just the place goes nuts when he won the title for the first time. And the other one, if you want to do a YouTube on it, someone prank phone calls him once, and he totally falls for it. Some guy says, "Yeah, wrestling's fake," and he's like, "I'll show you how fake it is." And so look up Goldberg prank phone calls, R.D. Mercer. It is well worth listening to. It is hilarious.
Look at Uncle Mike, the treasure trove of Goldberg minutia there. That was good. I didn't realize that. That sounds like a good time, a Goldberg prank call. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would play with that, which makes it kind of fun. We have our listeners guessing. They had no idea either. They were all stumped. Listen, saying Attitude Era is his favorite era. He still didn't know the music. So that was a little bit of a stealthy one, but a fun one. And when you see it in person with the fire and the explosions and the crowd yelling, it is pretty cool. You know what else is pretty cool? It's the trading block. So let's get rolling.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
He's claiming he guessed Goldberg now before the music there. We'll see. I'll give it to you, Mr. Unlimited, because there's no prizes for this one. It's more just an honor system we have here coming in. There are also no prizes, listeners, for everyone talking up the market these days, because today, at least, seems like just a glut of bad news kind of weighing on the markets. Of course, we have the endlessly bad news coming out of Afghanistan. In fact, Biden going to address that later on today, so we'll see if that... I'm not sure if he's doing it during market hours or immediately after the close, but that could certainly weigh on markets going forward. And then, of course, we have a lot of other lingering issues, what's going on with the Delta, everything else. So it seems like a lot of that kind of weighing in. Of course, we do have just some profit taking as well. All of that turning all the major indices to the red. S&P off about 0.25%, NASDAQ off about 0.75%, and Dow off about 0.5%. But actually, Dow kind of unched right now. Global Dow was off 0.5%. This is off the lows they were of the session. Of course, we saw a nice little bid for VIX coming into the start of the day. And if you were excited and tried to hit some bids out there in VIX land, like myself, yeah, no dice. They really didn't. They didn't last that long at all, as is usually the case. We joke about it here on the show, but we always say, that bid for vol is short-lived. You got to get it while you can. And it lasted, let's see, a few minutes today. See how high do we get in the VIX cash? Looks like 1764 was the high. We're about a point below that now, right around 16.5. Still up a point from last show. So we still are net up. And who knows, we could revisit some of those lows again. More spookage, to coin a term, could come out of Washington, send us lower again. But right now, at least, it seems like that bid for vol was short-lived. And we see there's a lot coming out of the weekends, too. They get the weekend back, and they put a little bit extra in there as well in the early opening moments. And again, it's short-lived as usual. VVIX at about a 115. It's down about a point from where it was this time last week. And VXX was at about a 26. Let's see where that's hanging out right now. 26.65 right now. How high did that get intraday? That got up to about 27, almost half, 27.41. So you had a nice little lift there in VXX. So we're actually up about 2/3 of a point from last show. And vol Q, of course, which is, of course, the at-the-money vol of the NASDAQ 100, actually shy of the 15 handle, which is crazy given what we're seeing out there, 1494. Unless, I'm not showing a chart, so maybe that data is wonky. Let's just look really quickly. Showing them shy of a 15 handle, which is strange for a day when the NASDAQ was selling off pretty aggressively. But it was at a 16 last week. So if that data is correct, that's about a point off from where it was this time last week. Mr. Uncle Mike, you won it on the second go around, even though I think you knew it before I played it. So if you have any other Goldberg trivia, hit us with it. And then B, what else is lighting up your tape out there today, sir?
No other ones. I just remember how excited Bobby the Brain Heenan would get whenever Goldberg would come out. He did a great job of playing it up back in the day. That was the 80s were undeniably the greatest era of professional wrestling, but the late 90s when I was in college, I'll give that a close second. It really got good then too, and the two federations were fighting with one another. But anyway, just with what I'm seeing today, I think it is kind of wait and see at this point as to what's going to happen with Afghanistan when the president speaks. And we are technically up on the day because all of the down pressure that the market had was from a gap down. And so we did gap down, but buyers have come in so far. And we're still, when you look at it, we're roughly 10 points off an all-time high in the S&P 500. And that can change at the drop of a hat. So we really have not had a lot of downward pressure in this market lately. But on the flip side, it feels like we're just kind of tinkering up. And hopefully for us bulls out there, it doesn't just fall off the cliff on the roller coaster. Bonds have caught a yield today, or caught a yield, have lowered a yield. I've caught a bid today, so there are some bond buyers out there. Definitely watching that. If you look at IEF, the ETF that tracks the 7 to 10 year U.S. government treasuries, that's up 35 cents on the day, which is not an extreme move, but it's definitely something to take a look at in the bond world. Silver is flat on the day, so we do have that. And then we have a little bit of a pullback in oil. So in terms of where we're watching, things are down, and it looks like there is a little bit of a rush to buy government treasuries at this point in time, but there's not much of one. So it's not enough of one for me to be saying, oh, this is a signal or this is something we need to be concerned with. It is kind of a little bit of a down day. We do have within the technology sector, in looking at it, technology is down a little bit, but not a lot. XLK, it's down 34 cents on the day. So we definitely do not have a lot of downward movement. So in this, looks like the market needed to take a little bit of a breather. It took a 20-point breather, but now it's only taken a 10-point breather. So, or close to a 30-point breather, I should say, earlier in the S&P. But for right now, we're back to down only roughly 10 points in the S&P. So who knows? That's what I'm seeing.
And Biden is speaking at 2:45 Central, 3:45. So there could be a chance for this to impact today's session. I was thinking maybe it was after the close, but it is just at the end of today's session. We all know when Washington starts speaking, sometimes not so good for the markets out there. Let's go on out now to Mr. Meatball. Mr. Meatball, sir, another kicking off of a week, another bit of weekend coming back in, and a bit of a pop to vol. But if you tried to really get any of it, there really wasn't much to get, sir.
Yeah, the VIX, we briefly saw that curve really tighten up. It's starting to widen again. You're seeing volatility come in, huge call activity in some big names. I want to point out Apple, the August 150 calls that expire on Friday. As we're speaking, and I know you're going to touch on this, almost 260,000 of these calls have traded today. We're only about halfway through the session. This is some just unbelievable paper in Apple. Even for Apple, that's really active. And Apple's had quite the whirlwind day. It was down over $2. It's now green on the day. It opened up green on the day. The NASDAQ looks like the softy of the group. Amazon still looks soft. Tesla is down about 5%. Microsoft marginally off. Google is off 0.75%. So your FANG outside of Apple is not looking hot. But outside of that, the Dow is threatening to go green, and the S&P, like as Mike said, it's off $9 now. Just the amount of daily movement in the SPX has collapsed. It's moving at a clip of about, 6% annualized, which is ridiculously low for the S&P 500, and is one of the reasons why we could see volatility continue to get softer. I would not be surprised to see the VIX close back with a 15 handle if we stay here, as some of the volatility and fear come out of the marketplace.
And let's see what's coming into or going out of the marketplace right now, listeners. As of course, my system wants to play slow ball with me today, but we'll see if we can get it all caught up for us here today. Yeah, VIX, on a day where things are kind of moving around a wee bit. You're not seeing commensurate paper. Remember, you saw this time last week, this was on Monday's show, we were surprised that VIX was pretty much already at 400,000 contracts right now, which is a lot for VIX this time of day, especially when the ADV is, even after having ticked up last week, is still only around 450,000 out there. And yet today, we're seeing more kind of along the paper we would expect, about 200,000 contracts exactly on the tape right now out there in VIX land. Let's go out to SPY, see if there's a little bit more paper out there in the broad indexes, and that is the case. SPY at, looks like about exactly 2.8 million contracts right now. The ADV just a tick under 4 million, about 3.9 million out there. So broad indexes are where the action is right now. Let's see if we can find the S. Similar story, actually. Almost 1 million contracts up in the S right now, 961,000. That's a lot for the S. There was a while there where the ADV for the S, especially right when they came back from, obviously being virtual, was the ADV was around, 700, 800,000 contracts. So this is already a full day's worth of paper and then some. And the ADV is right around 1.25 or so right now out there in S-Land, which is actually pretty robust. The Qs already putting an M on their tag as well. 1.15 million contracts in the Qs land. The ADV is about 1.3 million. So yeah, they're probably going to hit that today. And small caps kind of lagging, 308,000 contracts. So they're right around half their ADV. Their ADV is 640, but nowhere near the numbers we're seeing percentage-wise, at least, from the Qs or indeed even the S out there today. Let's go on out to the single names. Mr. Meatball was kind of talking about some of the crazy paper he sees out there. Let's see what we can see out here from a top 10 perspective. Cost you right now 232,000 contracts to break into the top 10. That's not bad. Listen, that's nothing to sneeze at. There are some days when it's light out there. It could be 130, 140, 150. So this is certainly impressive. It's not, the 250, 280, 300,000. We've seen some crazy days, but it's nothing to sneeze at. That 230,000 contracts gets you to NVIDIA. Number 9, Softy, still hanging out in the top 10 there, 247,000 contracts. Up to number 8, Moderna. We finally get past the 250,000 level, 256,000 contracts for Moderna. Of late, Moderna's been kind of a top 10 stalwart for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. But nonetheless, Moderna continues to resonate out there. And then we've got Palantir. That was a big player just recently with their earnings. Let's see what Palantir is up to today. Palantir, it's off about 60 cents, down to about 24.30. This is, of course, still above the levels it was at 22.30 just a midweek last week. So still up about $2 after that crazy earnings pop, got up to nearly 26. And just the explosion of options volume we saw out there. Now it's kind of settling down, up about $2 from where it was this time last week and off about 60 cents today. All that good for nearly 300,000 contracts, 291,000. So Palantir still putting up some numbers. Number 6 is NEO, still clinging in there in the top 10, 324,000 contracts. Number 5, again, back to the wrong reasons. It's Pfizer, 383,000 contracts. Now we're getting Mimi for number 4. Back to our friends, the Symbol Twins, not Boeing and Bank of America. No, it's the other two. It starts with AMC at 494,000 contracts. So number 4, we're already threatening 500K. And then number 3, AMD, the other half of the Symbol Twins there, is breaking it, 517,000 contracts. So number 3, listeners. Number 2, it's Tesla, 851,000. I guess you can guess what number 1 is. Mr. Meatball was just talking about it. It's freaking Apple, just on fire out there today. Almost 1.7 million contracts. You're talking about these 150s expiring this week, Mr. Meatball. The stock's at about 149.40, up about 30 cents today. But man, that's you're betting on a lot there just just for this 1 week to break through the 130. I mean, it could happen. Let's see the biggest prints out there. We're seeing almost 6,000 lots of the 150s. Also seeing 150 puts going up. So it looks like maybe a bit of a conversion reversal going up out there as well. So a lot of action. Looks like a roll from AUG to SEP out there about 6,000 times. But outside of that, we got some other stuff lighting it up out here. Let's look really quickly. Most actives here. If my system will play ball with me quick enough. It's deciding it wants to hang again. Well, we'll come back to Apple really quick. Let's roll on out now to the earnings season. See what is afoot out there. These numbers hot off the presses right before showtime, listeners. From our friends over there at ORATS. If you wait a little bit after the show, there we go. Apple now finally coming back to play ball with me. 261,000, Mr. Meatball, of these August 150s going out this week have gone up, followed by 140,000 of the AUG 152 halves and 116,000 of the AUG doubles, the 155 calls. So good grief. You're talking over 500,000 contracts just in those 3 strikes today, Mr. Meatball.
Yeah, Apple is not messing around today. They are flying, and the volume is just off the charts. We've seen call buyers, call spread buyers in September, just incredible short-term volume in Apple, and pretty decent bets on it making a serious run over 150. So that's one to put on the to-be watch list, because those AUG 150s, they're not messing around with those. It's pretty impressive.
What do you think, listeners? 150 and north by the end of this week? 500,000 contracts seem to be wagering that's the case. What are your thoughts on that? Maybe we should put a second poll up there. Speaking of which, we have a cool poll. We'll get to that a little bit later. You folks have been bugging us for more Twitter polls. Well, they're back. You know what else is back? Like I said, is all this data from our friends over there at ORATS Land, and another heavy earnings week. Some fun names, including today we got Roblox. If you haven't had a kid in the last decade, you probably don't know what Roblox is, but it's been a very interesting kind of build your own game platform that has morphed into all these other crazy things out there right now. Well, they're popping off after the bell today. Tomorrow we got Walmart, Home Depot, and Krispy Kreme. Don't need me to tell you what those are. I had Krispy Kreme yesterday, actually, for the first time in a long time, and it was delicious. Wednesday, we had Target, Lowe's, NVIDIA, and Cisco. Cover your ears, Uncle Mike. Thursday, you got Macy's and Kohl's and BJ's. And Friday, we got John Deere and Foot Locker. And, of course, we got some numbers. Let's look here. Roblox, after the bell, they're at about an $84 as of this report. Oh, my goodness. They were pricing in $8.50. In the past, they've moved nearly $18. I know we don't have the longest track record for this stock, but still, my goodness, $18 to 8.5 right now. Yeah, we have data going back to March of this one. So clearly it's a bit of a frame of reference issue, but still, wow, that's quite a cutting of the earnings juice. Did they cut it enough? I guess we'll find out after the bell today, listeners. Home Depot, also, they're before the bell tomorrow. 331 and a third is where they were as of this report. Oh, this is interesting. In the past, they've moved $6.50. Right now, they're pricing in $9. So one of the scant names to price in more juice going into their announcement. That's very rare. And if past is prologue, they will be brutally annihilated for their efforts. You shall find out. Walmart, let's see if they're doing the same thing in Walmart. They are tomorrow before the bell. 149.5 is where they were as of this report. Looks like they kind of got the memo out there. They were pricing in $4.55. In the past, they've moved $4.52. So pretty much right in line with the past. Then we've got, that's right. This is Krispy Kreme. They used to be listed, and then they went private. I remember they listed I'm pretty sure they listed when I was on the floor of the SEBO, because they came down one of the few times you could eat on the floor. Is they came out and gave out donuts to everybody. We're like, oh, great, we can eat on the floor, because otherwise it was verboten down there, listeners. So that's one of my good memories of the original Krispy Kreme IPO. But yeah, they went private again, and now they're back. Ticker symbol donut, DNUT. I like that one. They are after the bell on Tuesday as well. They were at $15 and they're pricing in $1.62. Obviously no past history for this one because they kind of just came back. It's a weird saga there. Public, go private again, and then public again. Obviously, like all these donut manufacturers, they had issues in the great kind of Atkins craze of the early 2000s, probably why they went back to private, but now they're back. So we shall see how that fares. We've got Lowe's here. They're at $190.5. They're popping off before the bell on the 18th. They were pricing in $8. In the past, they moved $9.16. So some like calmer heads are prevailing out there. Let's go out to Target, the other side of the big box retail there. They're on the 18th before the bell as well. $261.5 is where they were as of this report. They're pricing in $12.61. In the past, listeners, get this. They've moved $20.5. My goodness, they are coming for this vol with abandon. Ooh, that's not a Roblox. We have some data, some history for Target. And wow, they really took a lot of skin off that ball. That's an impressive squeeze. We'll keep an eye on Target. Did they squeeze enough? Have they overdone it? We shall see. In terms of the season, we're hovering right now at about an 86, actually, listeners, which is actually mildly impressive, given what we've seen of late and the number of names that have just been annihilated. You'd think it would be lower. Week 1 was 76%, so week 2 was an apocalyptic 57%. Week 3, 67%. And according to this data, week 4, again, sometimes they go back and amend this as they crunch all the data and everything again. But right now, week 4 is holding at a 107%. So one of the maybe only outperforming weeks we've seen in the pandemic era. Maybe there was one other, but so far at least, week 4 seems to be kind of holding everything up, which is interesting. We'll see how that holds. So we're at about an 86. Take out week 4, and it's probably back in the low 60s again. So interesting stuff here. Of course, some of this numbers here from like Target and others show that people aren't exactly racing to put more vol back in, but we'll keep an eye on that as we keep on rolling. Is time, listeners. It's banging at the gates. It's time to release not the Kraken, but the Eye of Sauron, because it is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
Welcome to the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we get weird, we get wild, and we see what the heck is lighting up the weird side of the options day. Speaking of weird and silly, Nichols in our Secret Handshake Club says, I'm an 80s kid, macho man for life, going back to our wrestling. Yes, I'm with you. I'm still an 80s era guy at heart. I know some people who are diehards like that attitude era, but for me, nothing will top the era of the Machos and the Hogans and the Warriors. Clearly Macho Love is still strong. When I was at that Goldberg event, there was a guy out there cosplaying, if you will, as Macho Man, and everyone was lining up to take pictures with him. They all love Macho Man. I think in the realm of high-end collectibles, the Mattel folks were trying to sell some crazy high-end ring and do like a Kickstarter thing with it, and nobody wanted to touch it. And then they added in a Macho figure, and all of a sudden, bam, everyone can't get enough of it. So, yeah, Macho Love still strong out there. I'm with you, Nichols. I don't think spoiler alert, I shouldn't say if we've done him or not, because maybe we'll make a Macho Man into the rotation sometime soon. I'm just throwing it out there. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron found out there today. And this is, got some numbers here today, listeners. This one, a blind ferret could have found this one. This is pretty sizable. We're going to kick things off out there in Match Group. They pretty much have cornered the market on love, Hunt Brothers style. They have, of course, Match.com, but also other sides of it like Tinder and others. So if you have any sort of online love quest going on, chances are you're engaging with something from the entity known as Match Group, ticker symbol Match, MTCH. Trading right now about 133, actually off about 3.25%. So not a good day for the Match folks. Actually off 3.25%, about 2.5%. On the year, let's see, a year ago they were trading about 114, so up about almost 20 points, about 19 handles on the year. So that's a little over 16%. And they kind of sold off. Looks like their nadir was in September. September 8th, they hit pretty much the 100 level almost exactly. It bounced off at 100.25. And ever since then, they've pretty much been rallying. By November, they're trading 132. By December, they're trading 156. Then they did have a little bit of a break. They sold off again down to, 131 back in January. Then almost straight back up again because in February, they're trading pretty much their 52-week high of about almost 175, 174.68. And then they kind of gave it up again. So this is actually more volatile than it appears at first. Sold off to 131 again by March. And then back by April 28th, they're back up to about 160 again. Then they sold off again down to, 138 in May. So they've actually had a few fits and starts along the way. Hung out there for a while. And then of late, they really rallied again in June from 143 up to about 164.25. Bounced around that mid-60s level for a while until recently, till the last week or so. They started selling off again. They went from about 161 all the way down to where they are right now, right around 133. So obviously, the last couple of weeks out here in the land of Match Group, not exactly lighting up the tape out here, but still net up on the year. So if you're a Match Bull, you still had a decent year, all things considered. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron found. I'm going to guess, given this recent trajectory, it's probably puts. And yeah, that seems to be the case. And pretty beefy puts as well in terms of overall. We wouldn't be meefy, Mr. Meatball, but they're beefy and sizable. We got 30,221 of the SEP 115 puts going up out there today, listeners. That's a pretty beef. Let me just look really quickly. Again, if my system wants to play ball with me today, what is the ADV out there in Match? They do a decent clip, about 14,000 a day. So perhaps more than you might think. But still, this is over 2x that. 30,221 of the September 115 puts. Remember I said they bottomed out on the 52-week chart at about 100 almost exactly, and they topped out at 175. So 115 isn't too far off that 52-week low. Looks like paper blasting away at those. They had to annihilate the bid to get this done, though. The bid was 123 when they came out for these puts. They sold them at 101. That bid must have been nonsense. I don't know, 20 cents through the bid? That's pretty aggressive. Either way, yeah, I think it's fair to say they probably sold these bad boys. They sold them for basically $1. 30,221 times. If you're wondering, it's about a 46 vol out there. This is clearly opening because there's no size to match this on the strikes. There are earnings, but not in the cycle for this. Looks like they just happened pretty much in Match. So the next announcement is scheduled for November. So this is pretty much just a post-earnings line in the sand for some size, Mr. Meatball. What are your thoughts here on someone drawing a very sizable line in the sand here in your favorite Match Group?
Oh, well, I'm all over Match.
Yeah, I won't tell your wife. It's okay. It's a secret between me and you and all of our many listeners.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, Match.com, how can you lose? Tinder, one of my favorite apps. These are a line in the sand. They apparently went through the bid to get some real size up. And if you look at where Match is trading, these are nicely out of the money, but they pick in some nice primo. You're right, not meafy. They're not in the money enough, but they definitely have some juice to them. So I don't have a real issue with this. It makes sense. Match is down a little bit today, taking a little bit of primo, and buy these back for a quarter when Match invariably goes up again.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a super aggressive line in the sand. They obviously had to work to get it done. That bid was meaningless to them. They sold 20 cents. I'm not sure if I've ever seen. That must be a bad disseminated quote. I can't imagine seeing a bid for 123. I know you're selling over 2x the ADV, but 20 cents through it, that seems a bit much. But hey, that's what they had to do to get 30,000 done. This is an interesting one. We shall come back to this one. Listen, what do you think about this line in the sand? You like this? Would you be with this person? Would you be on the other side of this in Match Group? We shall all find out together forthwith. Meanwhile, let's keep on rolling here. Let's go out to a newcomer in the odd block history here. This is 1847 Goedeker, Inc. Ticker symbol GOED or GOED, GOED. Trading a whopping $2.38 off about a quarter or nearly 9% today. So this one's taken a bit of a drubbing today. Looks like this is an appliance retailer. I'm not familiar with this name here. Well, before we break down what our Eye of Sauron found out here, let's see what this thing has been up to over the course of the past year. Been a troubling year for them. Just said they're trading shy of $2.50 right now. A year ago, they were trading $8.35. So a wee bit north of this, and they kind of bounced around that $8 level for a while. In December, they rallied there from like $8 all the way up. Looks like they topped out pretty much right around their 52-week high. So they nearly doubled by January into February. They got up to about $17.75. So actually looks like they were at $8 and change. So they more than doubled. And they kind of held on to that for a brief period. They topped out, looks like, on February 5th of last year. And then ever since then, they've kind of been trending lower. They got down to, looks like about 607 in May. Actually, 432 on May 26th. And they spiked up on May 27th to about $6. And then they sold off hard the next day, May 28th, down to $1.82. So for this appliance retailer, this is certainly pretty volatile. So they got crushed below where they are right now. And then they kind of rallied back from there by June 23rd, they're trading about $4.50 again. So they went from 6 and change down to $1.82 and up to $4.50 again in the span of a few weeks. And then ever since then, they've kind of been trending lower again. They were still at $3 last week. And then they took another drubbing in the last couple of sessions here, down to where they are right now, $2.36. So not exactly the best story. They're off nearly $6 or over 70% on the year so far. So clearly a rough year for Goedeker. Looks like they own Appliance Connection and Appliance Gallery, 2 stores I've never frequented. So let's see what our Eye of Sauron found out here today. Let's see. Oh, by the way, GOED does a whopping 2,992 contracts a day. So that's even more than I thought. But interesting stuff. But someone's really got an axe to grind today, Mr. Meatball. In terms of the AUG 2.5s, I said we're trading a little bit shy of that right now, right around 240 out there. Someone coming in, excuse me, I said AUG, I meant October. The October 2.5s going up for size today. Remember, this thing only does about 2,000 odd contracts a day. 4,999 of the October 2.5s came in for 35 cents, pretty much almost lifting the offer. They were offered at 40. They came in and scooped these. This is almost a 100 vol, a 96 volatility, listeners. The stock was pretty much right here, and they did it 244. And then they said, you know what? That's not enough. We need some more. And they've come back in for a number of times. They came back in for another almost 4,000, 3,759, also for 35 cents. And then they got some more, 500 more for 35 cents. On and on it goes. A total of over 8,000 had traded when we kicked off the show here today. Now it's up even more. It's over 14,000. So more have obviously printed since the show started of these October 2.5s. Interesting. So October at the money calls, taking a bit of a flyer, nearly 100 vol, over 14,000 contract. Mr. Meatball, this is a little bit different than some of the swings for the fences we've seen before and some of these other cheap names in that they're not looking for the stock to double. Usually we see the 5s or something else outlandish trading. This is straight up pretty much at the money, slightly out of the money calls here. And going out to August, and they're paying some vol and they're paying some juice for it, but it's not the most outlandish, but it still is pretty crazy. What are your thoughts here on everyone's favorite name, GOED, and these APPL 2.5 calls, sir?
Well, I mean, they're 2.5 calls, right? I mean, it's definitely a one where you're kind of hoping that the stock gets a little bit ahead of steam and makes a pop over that 2.5 price and on from there. But, you know, this is one of those where you ask yourself, if the stock is that cheap, you know, is it worth it doing the calls, or are you just better off buying the stock? And these are right on that level. Yeah,
I mean, you're paying almost 15% of the cost of the stock just for calls out to October. Good thing the Viceroy is not here. He would not be a fan of these. Have you ever attended or been in an appliance connection or appliance gallery store, sir?
An appliance gallery store? No. I once saw an appliance exhibit. It was a toilet that had a banana and three 16-inch softballs in it. And it was some artistic representation. Oh, but that's the closest I've ever been to a appliance exhibit.
That's a quality exhibit. I'm sad I missed that one. I regret asking you already, sir. So instead, let's keep on rolling into our final name here. Maybe some of this action having to do with what's going on out there right now in the global political environment. But we got Northrop Grumman coming in last, obviously a big aerospace and defense contractor here in the U.S. Ticker symbol NOC, N-O-C. It's been quite a while since we talked about Northrop Grumman here. Let's look really quickly for them on the year. A year ago, it was trading right around 340. By the way, they're at 367.5 right now, so up about 8% on the year. Looks like they rallied up into the start of, towards the end of August last year, right around 349. And then they sold off pretty hard. By October, they're trading 289 again. And they kind of bounced in that 289 to low 300s range until pretty much March of this year. Then they started rallying again. They went from 298 on March 9th all the way up to 346 on April 16th. And then by May 10th, they were trading right around their 52-week high of about 379. And they bounced around that level for quite a while. Looks like in June, they started coming off a little bit again from about in the 370s down to about 350 range. And they've kind of been bouncing in this 350s to 360s mid-tier range as we speak right now, but still decent rally up about 8% on the year, and certainly well off their low of 282 that they hit back in, the January nadir for this name. So what did our Eye of Sauron find? Looks like, again, speaking to the current political climate out there, maybe some of the news out of Afghanistan driving this. Either way, we've got the 395 calls coming in. So decently optimistic, coming in 3,220 times for 60 cents. Not quite lifting the offer, but they were a dime at 80 cents. So a pretty wide market gives you a sense of how many of these calls trade on a given day. This stock was right around here when it went up. Actually, no, I take it back. It was way low. This thing's must have been up to today. It's had a pop today, looks like, because the stock was 361 when this one printed this morning. So this thing has moved 6 points. Wow. Quite the day. Earnings are not till October, so something is driving this thing today. So these could already be looking real. If the stock was 362 or right around there when they put these up, these things could already be looking pretty good. 395 calls going up 3,220 times for 60 cents, Mr. Meatball. What are your thoughts here? Looks like they may be already looking pretty good.
Yeah, this looks like just a pure bet on direction and relatively low cost for the trade. I don't hate it, especially when they're right.
You know what else we don't hate, listeners? It's the strategy block. So let's get to it.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the strategy block, the portion of the show where we welcome on Mr. Uncle Mike yet again and dispense him this time to share his deep, deep reminiscences on the era that was Stone Cold versus Goldberg. Have at it, sir.
Not quite. I have many memories, but quite frankly, the show would not be long enough for me to go on about memories between the Attitude Era along with the golden age of the 80s. But with that, what I do want to go through today is a personal conviction of mine with what I do with my trading / investing. And I just want to kind of break it down for everybody. You hear me be the resident PERMA-BULL, as Mark always calls me, but why am I not bearish ever? It's probably a question that a lot of people have been asking through the years. And I just kind of want to go through that right now. First reason why I'm never bearish is because of the fact that we've had a bull market for the last 100 years or so. We've heard the people talking about how the market has averaged 10% and every year over the course of those times. Now, of course, we understand that there's years that the market's down 40%, and then there's also years that it's up 20% and up 40 and 50%, whatever the case may be. But if averaged, it does come out to the 10% rate of return year in, year out. So with that being said, in the years that it goes down, how come I don't try and capitalize on it? Well, reason number one, I stink at it. That's the first reason. What I like doing is I think there's two ways with which I like to invest. One is where I'll actually hold the underlying, meaning in the COVID era, a year and a half ago, when the initial COVID bearish era is what I'm referring to, when the markets tanked, there was a lot of stocks that I and we at RCM held. And we felt, okay, the market's going to come back at some point, so let's hold on to these. It's the right thing to do. And it obviously turned out that it was. Now, with my aggressive trading, the thing that I like to do to protect myself against down markets is my ideal method is I like to just get out. If you're out, you're in cash. You don't have to worry about making adjustments. You don't have to worry about doing a lot of things. And if the market is going straight down, you're in cash. So it's really not bothering you that much because you're in cash. And that's what I did during the COVID time frame. Now, with that, of course, markets came back and I did miss out on some upside of it, but I'm fine with that just because of the fact that I stayed consistent to my rules. And there's been times to where I've missed out on downside. 2018 was a year to where I missed out on a lot of downside, and it really worked out well. But where I'm going with this is, why don't I try to make money on the downside? Like I said, reason number one, I stink at it. Now, why do I stink at it? Well, where I typically do profit in markets when they go up is when markets are going up at a somewhat reasonable pace. So in other words, if we look at like a day where the S&P is up 100 points, a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times, it's not really benefiting me that much. I mean, it's benefiting me. I'm bullish and it's going up. But a lot of times it's either running through my short calls that I have on a spread, or perhaps some long calls that I had that were out of the money or still fairly far out of the money. And I'm trying to make money in those ways. And those methods are typically reliant upon me getting not as much bull market. So in other words, if I have a spread on and it's a bullish spread, whether it's a short put spread, a long call spread, it doesn't really help me much if the market goes up parabolically as opposed to if the market goes up a little bit. I typically do my best when the market goes up a little bit. And that's how I've made money through the years, quite frankly. Now, with that being said, that's my style. That's what I do. That's what I know. That's what I love. When markets go down, people who are bearish typically make money when they're right. They make money when markets go down super fast and super far. Not my style. It's not what I'm good at. It's not what I do. And so because it's not, I don't do it. Now, with that being said, are there ways with which you can buy puts to protect yourself or just get out or things like that? Of course. But because of the fact that, number one, I believe that markets are going to go higher throughout time, which very few people would disagree with me on that, I like to be bullish. And the second reason is that it fits the style of things with which I feel comfortable with, things that match both my needs as well as my clients. Because if I'm doing something the same as my clients, I'm a fiduciary, so I'm obligated to make sure it matches what they need as well. And that's how it matches up. So in case anyone's been asking, which I know a lot of people have just through my conversations with them, why am I never bearish? It's for those reasons that I am not. And that is the strategy block for today.
All right, and let's keep on rolling. We got a few minutes here. Let's see if we can squeeze some of you on quick. Mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, let's get into it quickly. Let's go out to the Secret Handshake Club. We got Mr. Unlimited in the chat. We were talking last week about how we saved you guys some money not buying the VIX upside. Well, sounds like he's doing the opposite this week. He said, Mr. Meatball, thanks for the Apple call out. You called it out at 115. I jumped in, and before the show is over, I just sold out those calls for 160. That's why you need to listen live. Well, congrats there, Mr. Unlimited. Glad we could help you out there. And you're right. That's why you need to join the secret club so you can get in there and listen live throughout the week. All sorts of crazy nuggets and fun nuggets dropping throughout the week here on the shows. Mr. Meatball, there you go, sir. A little bit of Apple paying its dues today, sir.
Yeah, pay attention. When I say something, you listen. All right, that's what we're here for. Apple, since we started talking, rallied $1. Don't be surprised to see this thing move further. I think we're going to see the S&P 500 potentially get to flat on the day, maybe green. There's just, I talked about this, I think, on Friday, Mark. There seems to be kind of this feedback loop in volatility. One of the reasons that the volatility curve has been so bid relative to the cash index is because there's a lot of hedging going on. Well, when we get these sell-offs and people are heavily hedged, they don't feel the need to follow through. They don't feel the need to dump. They sit on their positions. So these big sells don't get kind of that secondary selling of people panicking. And the next thing you know, the BTFD is on and the stock market gets to flat on the day.
Yes, the BTFD. Will it persist? Will Biden kill it? I guess we'll find out a little bit later today. Of course, speaking of finding out, we found out what you folks thought for VIX. Man, it was a hot and heavy, very evenly distributed poll. One of the most we've seen out there in VIX land. Of course, we asked you last week, where was VIX going to close at the end of the week? Gave you 4 choices: below 16, 16 to 17.5, 17, 51 to 19, or north of 19. And towards the end of the day, as we were clearly hanging out in the 15 handle, folks kept piling into the 16 to 17.5. I guess they were betting on a little bit of an uptick out there. And that's what ended up winning. Almost 29% chose that, followed by 24.2% for below 16, which turned out to be the winner. VIX closed, I believe, around 15.25. And VIX 17.5 to 19 and over 19, each tied with 23.4%. But you folks were all over the map, which kind of makes it interesting and also shows why vol is probably a little bit all over the map these days as well. Our question of the week this week is a fun one, kind of volatility themed again. Everyone's always talking about vol right now, but which of these products holds the volatility crown? Quite simply, which of these has the highest 30-day at the money vol? Don't pull it up on your brokerage platform. Use your gut. What does your gut tell you? Gave you 4 choices: Bitcoin, VIX, so vol itself, crude oil, or everyone's favorite volatile name, Tesla. That's live right now. It just went live before showtime. Listeners, you folks can pile in there at options. Make your voice heard there. You've been asking for a long time to get the polls back. We're obliging you. Glad to see so many of you are having fun and engaging with them, as well as making money out there. We always want that at the end of the day as well. As we keep on rolling into our final segment, it is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block. This is indeed the portion of the program where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on for the rest of this week into Thursday's show. But I think we could clearly say we're keeping an eye on things even through the end of today's session, because there's a lot of question marks up in the air. Mr. Meatball, we'll start with you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until Thursday's show, certainly, but even more pressingly, probably by the end of the day, sir?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Joe Biden is speaking at 2:45 Central, 3:45 Eastern. We do have the FOMC minutes coming out later in the week. We've got earnings. I know Mike is going to do a deep dive on Cisco, so I'm not going to comment too much on Cisco, but that's one that I'm watching. It's had a really nice run. So now the question is will it do what it always does, which is disappoint? Walmart and Target. Target has been a juggernaut, and I don't know exactly what what good can come out of this earnings. It feels like a kind of a tech type of earnings. And then I just want to keep an eye on this market.
There we go. And taking a little bit of left-handed shot at Uncle Mike with the Cisco. It never goes away, Mr. Uncle Mike. Really quickly, Mr. Meatball, what are your thoughts that we get a vol pop towards the end of the day off Biden?
It's possible. I don't know what the president could say that would actually move volatility. I mean, what's done is kind of done.
We're sending all the troops back in, baby. All of them.
Yeah,
unleashing.
In tragic fashion. What's done is done. I don't know what he could say, but if you look at what happened when Trump spoke during market hours, and what happened when Obama did, and what happened when Bush did, the market tends to sell off. So you could see it. I don't know that I'm going to see it happening. In addition, I would not be surprised if the press conference gets pushed back to, it's not like presidents are known for their timeliness. So, 2:45 probably means closer to 3:00. So we may not even have time to react till tomorrow.
That is certainly possible. Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. First off, how do you respond to that Cisco dig? And then B, what else is on your tape, sir?
I don't understand. What's the Cisco dig? It doesn't make any sense to me. In terms of what's on my radar for around the block, right now we are 3 points away from a new all-time high. So we've definitely rallied when the show is on. So even though the markets typically sell off if presidents speak, when the greasy meatball speaks, markets rally. So with that, just watching, staying tuned with us, and I'll be watching what President Biden has to say today later in the day.
All right, everybody. And that music means, unfortunately, we've come to the end of another jaunty journey through the world of options. Thank all of you for joining us in the Secret Handshake Club. Of course, listening after the fact. We love all you folks, too. Keep those questions and comments coming. If you like what you hear after the fact, keep rating and reviewing on your platform of choice. And before we go, let's go back around the horn. Mr. Meatball, we'll start with you. If folks are intrigued, they want to pick your brain on Apple calls or anything else, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, go to options.com and check us out. We are here to deliver awesome content to you on a daily basis. You can subscribe to any of our newsletters. Just go click on our newsletters, click subscribe, and you will be a happy camper because we're sending actionable ideas on a daily basis.
All right. And Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. If folks want to hit you up to debate the Goldberg versus Steve Austin phenomenon, where should they go? What should they do?
Oh, game on. But you can follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW, and you can see one of my old polls about the Road Warriors versus the Demolition, how the Road Warriors won it, I think like 70% to 30%. Or you can go to, or you can go to my website, stcharleswealth.com, if you're looking for a financial advisor who likes to delve in the option space.
That's funny how that cool double-sided MADBall I have on my desk at both ends of the Road Warriors, it somehow just ended up in the garbage right now. I don't know how that happened, Mr. Uncle Mike. I was saving it for you, but now somehow I carelessly knocked it into the garbage. Nonetheless, you can check them out for yourselves. stcharleswealth.com is the place to go. We got to go for a second now to rejigger, get some of our guests ready for what's coming up on crypto, and a little bit later today. Got some action out there, some stuff to talk about, and some fun guests so they can get all their technology sorted out. Always a fun thing, listeners. So we'll be back again, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern live to talk crypto after the fact, of course, back on whatever platform you're listening on. And then tomorrow, for all you folks in the Secret Handshake Club, got a great Q&A there with the director of risk himself. So get those questions in now if you're in the club. And we're back again on Wednesday, double dose of education, Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook Radio. And then back again on Thursday, another episode of the Option Block. See you then.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.